did you go from like heavy carnivore to vegan?
Yeah, you can say that.
Was that
You can
hard
say
for
that.
you?
No, once I seen that documentary, I said, what that, what, and again, as I'm telling you, like before I even saw that documentary, I was already reading books on like, what I'm eating and what I'm putting in my body. And
Mm-hmm.
so I already had some guidelines as to what, goes in and what doesn't go in. But yeah, I was still very pro eat whatever the hell, what I mean, you feel like eating. Um, and then it just came down to me saying like, if you know something is not good for you, then why are you still doing it? And it just boiled down to me just kind of cutting it off and, stopping. So
I mean, that's good that you were able to do that because I would imagine a lot of people have trouble changing your habits is the hardest thing.
right, right,
Because
but
people know smoking's bad, they still do it. Now, obviously, there's
right,
addictive qualities in cigarettes, but
right,
like it's clear that smoking's bad. There's no doubt about it.
right, right, right.
But it's hard to change habits.
Yeah, that is mastery of self is the most difficult thing we have to experience in life, right? So
Amen to that.
um it's
Amen to
tough.
that.
It's tough.
That's good. That's good. So you don't have any like uh animal cruelty's terrible like philosophies around the veganism, or you're just
Um,
looking for a healthier lifestyle?
you know what? I think that that's a very good question because like I am against eating certain animals, right? If
Okay.
you told me that you like if you told me that you were eating a dog, I would have a problem with that because I have
Right.
one. Right?
Right.
But who's to say that someone else who like, entertains that lifestyle is wrong per
Right.
se. So I can't say that I'm knocking anyone for eating what they're eating.
Right.
Um, but I just have to do what's best for me, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's important. Mastery of self. Knowing
Yeah, master
yourself,
yourself.
and
Right.
like, yeah, there's just so many things. It's just so crazy how you're influenced and then you start living your life and you're like, why am I doing this? Or, it's just great. Like for me, when I ate food, I never thought about how it made me feel. I would just eat
Right.
whatever was in front of me. And I didn't clock like how it was affecting me. I didn't clock that every time I ate a hamburger, I basically fell asleep the next 5 minutes.
Right.
It didn't click with me like, maybe I shouldn't have a burger for lunch
Right.
because red meat slows me down.
Right.
I was never encouraged to think about stuff like that. You just eat the burger or eat whatever was in front of you. That was my experience.
Right.
Um, so yeah, just being more conscious, and then being more conscious of what you eat. Obviously, you realize the bologna sandwiches your dad was giving to you as a kid may not be the best thing. Even
Right.
though when
Right.
he was a
Right.
kid, that was like maybe a luxury. I don't know, but that
Right.
was for him something he was used to. But I realized boar's head bologna may
Mm-hmm.
not be the most healthy thing for me.
Right. Right. Right.
But anyway, all right, we got some people on here. Welcome everybody. You just witnessed Nico and I going off about food, which is
Right.
we hit a lot of different topics. Nico and I, you know what? Let's actually just get right into the presentation because we'll get into who we are and why what you just witnessed is so typical of us.
Mhm.
Oops. So welcome to Make Your Money Work webinar. This is the first webinar we've actually done, which is awesome.
Nice.
I mean, oops, nope. You don't see the presentation, do you?
I do. It says you are viewing Becky
Does it say
Peters.
2020 investing opportunities?
Yeah, it's the presentation.
Oh,
Nice.
beautiful. Beautiful. I got two screens here, so
Ooh.
thank you, Claudia, for letting me know. All right. Is the sound good? Can y'all just type yes if the sound's good? Everyone can see the presentation. We all good? Beautiful, beautiful. All right, so welcome. This is Make Your Money Work. This is our, like I said, first webinar. Oops. So what is Make Your Money Work? Why are we here? A lot of you may know us, but Nico and I, we worked at Ernst & Young together. I actually found this t-shirt, repping it for the cost today. Nico and I worked at Ernst & Young together, and we would basically get together and chop it up. And if you were here in the beginning, you saw us just chopping it up about food. That's just something we naturally do together. We're both accountants, so one of the things we talked a lot about was money, and we realized the conversations we were having after work at a happy hour or something was very valuable for the community. So we decided to create a meetup and host it in the Bronx specifically, in that community, to try to educate that neighborhood as much as possible about making money work, because us humans work very hard for our money, and we think it's important for our money to work hard for us. So I'm gonna play, this is a video, just a quick 1-minute video of our, we had a 1-year celebration. We've been doing this for about what, 3, I think this might be our 3rd summer doing this, Nico.
Right.
And this is our 1-year oops. Dang, how do I play this? There's gonna be some technical difficulties, people, so just bear with us. Awesome. So that's just a little video of our 1-year celebration. So that was actually put together by the Bronxner. He's a great artist. The DJ was DJ J Fuse, and that was actually at Empanology when they were in Mott Haven. They're now at the Bronx Brewery. But anyway, just shout out to those people. And our in-person meetup is usually hosted at the Boogie Down Grind. That's been our headquarters for the past year or so. But obviously things have changed with the in-person. And so what we're going to talk about, first, let me just, okay, the chat, most of you guys got the chat down. I think most of us are Zoom experts at this point. There's also a question and answer part over here. If you have a specific question, feel free to throw it in the question and answer, and Nico and I will either answer it during the presentation or afterwards. So feel free. The chat, I think, is good for just general conversation, but if you have a specific question to what we're talking about, feel free to put it in the Q&A. So the first thing that I think is very important before you talk about, you're spending your Sunday afternoon about an hour with us, which is great. And thank you again for joining us. But why do you do all this? I think the why is very important why you do anything, and if you're going to spend a lot of extra time investing in yourself, you want to make sure you're doing it for a good reason, or at least that's what I would encourage you to do, because why would I sacrifice pleasures now if I don't have anything to look forward to in the future, right? So for me, my why is financial freedom. And that allows me to do things like travel and spend more time with family, or spend more time with just people I care about, right? So that to me is important. And financial freedom just is essentially me having the ability to choose to go to work rather than having to go to work, right? So right now, I'm in a situation where I kind of have to go to work in order to live the lifestyle I'm living, but at some point I want income coming from other places, that when I go to work on Monday, it's a complete choice and not a necessity. So, but I'm going to just show you some pictures just to do something a little fun here of some of my travel. So I've traveled a lot in my 20s, and, me studying investing so that I can do more traveling was definitely connected. So I was actually looking for photos to share with you guys, and I have a lot of photos. It was hard to choose them. So I decided I just chose a country, Ireland, and I'm just going to share with you some photos that I had from my travels. So I've been to Ireland, and actually I was doing this. I noticed I've been to Ireland 3 times in the past 7 years. So the first time was in 2013. I actually did this nice European backpacking trip for 6 weeks, which was awesome. That's what I did. Nico was studying for the CPA. I opted not to study for the CPA and go traveling instead. Nico's a CPA, I'm not, but it works for us. Right, Nico?
Right, right, right.
Yeah. So here's just some fun pictures. So in that's where Obama was from in Ireland. That town has a little bar with him, and that's me and my cousin in front of the bar in Ireland. That's me with a cow, or that's actually a bull. And it's very common for Irish people to have random stuff like that. That's my cousin again, or not the same one, obviously a different one. But I mean, how beautiful! My life was changed when I saw this view. Like, traveling, I think, is one of the best educational tools we can have. Just like seeing things like that. I mean, it's nice in the picture, but in person, it's unbelievable. That's me pouring my first Guinness in Dublin at the Guinness Storehouse. And then, so that was in 2013. I mean, there's a lot more, but obviously I'm just trying to give you guys an idea. 2014, I was in Ireland again with my best friend and her family. My best friend from high school, her family went to Ireland. I said, I'm coming with you. So I was able to make that work and go with them. And that's my best friend from high school, Stephanie, her brother, Ryan, and Elizabeth. So those are my people there. And I mean, I traveled on my own the first time and with family too. And then I traveled with friends here. And then I went back again. Flynn and I went to Ireland, and that's us in a beautiful square. Europe has these amazing squares. This is one of the most beautiful views I've ever seen in my life. We literally have to stop the car to just look at the view, which was really enjoyable. And that's me with some more cows, because why not? Let me some cows. So anyway, knowing your why. Oh, I meant to say, tap in your why. I just shared you my why. If you guys don't mind sharing, what is your why? Why are you here? Like, what's the true purpose of educating yourself and making your money work? I would love to see what you guys have to say in the chat. Nico, did you want to share your why, or what's your purpose? There you go. You just shared in the chat.
Right. Yeah, I did. It's similar to yours, right? The financial freedom aspect. It's also kind of a shift in where I'm from personally, right? So I grew up from very humble beginnings. No one in my family knew anything about financial well-being, and it showed, right, in my upbringing, because it's only going to manifest itself in your life, right? And so my parents didn't know anything about money, they didn't know anything about finances, but they weren't taught either. And so, part of my why is to shift that generational paradigm, to make sure that those who come after me never have to go through things that, I had to go through just because of knowledge sake. Like, if they do things because of their just personal action, that's totally, up to them.
Right.
But they won't be able to say that they didn't have the tools. Maybe I can say that, but they won't be able to say that they didn't have the tools. So financial freedom, as well as, like, just a generational wealth shift.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's just education is so important, because like you said, it's not your fault you didn't know, but now that you know, now you have a choice, which is a beautiful thing. So now it's completely up to that person to make that happen. So that's basically what we're here to do today. We have 4 topics we're gonna talk about and highlight, and we're here to just give people more tools. I mean, I think of money as a tool. The more you have, the more tools you have. That's how I view it. And if you don't know how to use the tool, it can be dangerous, so you have to be able to understand what's happening. So here we go. We're going to talk about stocks. We're going to talk about real estate. We're talking about group economics, and then neighborhood and local investing. And again, if you have any questions as we go, feel free to tap it in the Q&A, and then we can stick around for a little bit afterwards to talk about questions as well. So the first thing is the stock market. We actually did a meetup with Bronx Native back in January 2020, which was a completely different world compared to where we are right now. And Khadija, who is, I went to Fordham with her, and we both played on the basketball team there. She's in finance and is a whiz with this stuff, brilliant. And she did a presentation on Stocks 101, essentially. I mean, it was called 101, but she was going in on some things. There are some things you're like, what did you just say? But it's basically an overview. We spent an hour going over just the stock market itself. So I took some slides from her presentation to share. And I think this one's really important because it shows you how important it is to invest, right? I mean, there's obviously a huge wealth gap for a variety of reasons, but what I want to focus on here is what we have control over. You have control over knowing the stuff or not. You could log off right now. You could, you could be here and ask questions and be engaged and do your own research after this as well, or you could not. I mean, it's completely up to you. So what do we have control over? And you can see this chart shows that the top 10% of people have the most stock ownership. I mean, there's no, like, it just blows everyone out the water, right? Now there's obviously reasons to why that is, but again, we're focusing here on where we are today and what we can do about it. So getting in the game is important. And I know my girl Abigail's here. This is Abigail, everybody. Sitting on the bench, you're not going to be able to get into that purple bar. You know, you got to get off the bench. You got to get in the game. And of course, there might be mistakes. You know, there's definitely gonna be a learning process on the way, but you got to get in the game. Now, Abigail, in this scenario, she couldn't get in the game. She's the coach. She wasn't a player. She didn't ride the bench too much, Abigail. Back in our Fordham days, we played basketball together. But you can't sit on the bench. You gotta get in the game. You got to get in the game. So stock market. Does anybody think of this when they think of the stock market? I mean, the past 6 months have been literally a textbook example of how it can be a roller coaster. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to zoom out in the stock market, then we're going to zoom in, and we're going to zoom back out again, just so you can see how you can look at it yourself. So back in January, this is what the market looked like. So this is actually a screenshot of the market starting in 1926. So basically the life of the S&P 500. That's the 500 largest stocks on the stock exchange. The S&P 500 is a good indicator of the American economy, essentially, because it has like some of the biggest companies from a stock market, public market perspective. So you can see overall the stock market has gone up. I mean, obviously there have been big dips, but overall it's gone up. So long-term view, like Warren Buffett, if you don't know who he is and you're interested in stocks, you definitely should look him up. Warren Buffett. Long-term view, right? So that, and in January of this year, 5 months ago, everything was good. And then COVID happened. Now, obviously, you know, the health, that's a whole different conversation, but just looking at the numbers and investing perspective, the market went down 30% in 30 days. 1 month and 30 days went down 30%. So if you think back to that roller coaster screenshot I just showed you, it is literally can be a roller coaster. And so one thing I would say is if you're not fit to ride this roller coaster, because the worst thing you could do is sell in a situation like this. Like you see it going down and you freak out and then you sell. That would actually be the worst thing you could do. So if you can't withstand this type of activity, the stock market's a tough place to play. But I kind of just want to go through the numbers. So February 20th, the S&P was valued at about 3,300. 30 days later, it's valued at 2,300, literally 30%. So the S&P 500, generally, you get about a 6% return. So in order to get 30%, it's going to take you 5 years. And in 30 days, you lost 5 years worth of value. Like imagine buying something and then it takes you 5 years to save for this thing you bought. You finally bought it. And then it decreases, like it goes to zero, essentially. So the stock market can be a scary place if you don't understand how it works. So that was, this was looking at just the first 3 months of 2020. You can see it up here. And there's different places you can go. I'm gonna just type in Google Finance, Yahoo Finance. Those are good resources where you can look at charts and stuff. I love looking at charts just to see, because I'm a very visual person, just to see what's going on. And then this is actually 1 year out. You can see that this is the dip, the COVID dip, or however you want to refer to it, the 30% drop. But then it slowly went back up. And if you actually look back to a year ago this time, the S&P was valued at about 3,000. And now we're basically back to where it's at. So again, the roller coaster goes up and down. Again, this is just something you have to be aware of when you invest in something like the stock market. While we did experience a 30% dip, it recovered in about 3 or 4 months. Now, there's a lot of different reasons for that. Nico, I know you wanted to touch on some of those reasons, but let me see what I got here. Yeah, I kind of broke this out to 3 chunks. So we have from July 2019 to December 2019, basically the last half of 2019, we went up 11%. That's pretty good. But then in 30 days, or actually the first quarter, we dropped 29%, right? That's scary. a lot of people where they get screwed up is they jump off the ride here, but then you miss out on the 30% increase over 30 days, or sorry, 3 months. So so this is the ride. I mean, the last year has been a textbook example of how unstable basically the stock, not unstable, it is stable long term, but it can be a bumpy ride, right? I think that's a better way to look at it.
Right. Right. And I think that like just some of the reasons as to why we see all of those peaks and troughs, as we call it in, like, you know, economics or whatever the case may be, is just a matter of like consumer confidence, right? And so a lot of times when there's a big scare that comes out, people get scared and they act as such. And a lot of times when, you know, there is some type of story of confidence, people get confidence and they act as such, right? And so people tend to buy when they're more confident and hold on to their goods, or spend less when there's less confidence. And you can, like, the stock market is one of the ways that you can directly see how the consumer or the general public, you know, kind of views the economy at any point in time. And so it's good to have an understanding that when you're investing, that you're not doing it from a position of speculation. I hope this does well. I hope this, you know, doesn't tank, because then you're going to be one of those people who are, you know, being the bear or the bull, in a sense. But when you're thinking about investing in those things that you value, right? And so there, you know, that's based on who you are as a person. But, you know, historically, when you look at the stock market and the trend, it's always on an incline. It's always going up. And so as long as you know that you're putting your money or your tool, as Becky called it, in places that you actually value, then you might have more confidence that these things will bounce back. You know what I mean? Like, one, I remember in school, not to get on a soapbox, but we learned about supply and demand, right? And what is inelastic, you know, elasticity, you know, what like how correlations affect the market. And one thing that that we learned is that if you look at healthcare, the healthcare industry in particular, like, more times than not, it's going to be stable or it's going to be okay. Why? Because people want to live. And so if there's a price point that is out of reach, you can still bank on people buying that product because they want to live, right? And so I'm just using that as an example of, you know, how investing in things that aren't necessarily speculative can kind of give you some sort of mitigation of those risks that other people have if they're just banking on something going well, or, you know, hoping that something doesn't go well. So, but
yeah, that's speculate means you think it's going to go up. You dropping great words in there, so I'm just defining them just in case anyone doesn't understand bull, bear market. These are we're getting into a little vernacular, which is good. It's good to understand that these things exist, right? Because when you hear someone say, oh, it's a bear market, so now it's time to buy, you know, you could understand what's happening there. And speculate, you can speculate on anything. You can speculate on houses, which means you're going to build something in anticipation that you're going to be able to sell for higher value. So yeah, and Nico brings up a great point about like healthcare, for example, like industries that are traditionally strong. You have to pay attention, because anything can happen, and we're literally just experienced that. COVID literally changed public education. Similar to healthcare, people think, oh, schools will never go away. Schools literally every school literally went remote in 3 months' time. And they will continue to go remote. That is now a tool in their arsenal that they'll have to leverage. I mean, we'll have to see how it plays out. But, you know, traditionally you think, oh yeah, I can just, you know, I can invest in different things, or maybe I own real estate and I can always rent out to college students. College students weren't allowed back to campus in the spring. So you have to be just aware of these things so that you can adjust when necessary, and in whatever endeavor you get into. And that's why just keeping up and being a part of groups like this is important, so that, you know, it's just good to talk about things like this and bounce ideas off of other like-minded people. So going back to the stock market, perspective is important, right? Because if you're zoomed in or zoomed out, you're going to have different responses based on what's happening. So again, this is the zoom out, you know, looking at the market as a whole. And if we take the value of the market, right, in general, which we kind of already made this point, but just kind of reiterate, the S&P 500 has increased 6% year over year, right? So generally, the market goes up. Now, obviously, there's years where it goes down, but there's years that it goes up higher as well. And that's why Warren Buffett, one of the greatest investors ever, to say just invest in the S&P 500, set it and forget about it, essentially. There's obviously different methods too, but I trust him over anybody if you're going to take stock market advice. But yeah, so if you look at the long-term view, you like, okay, I'll get 6% year over year. I have to invest long-term to get that percent. But if you just look at the first quarter of 2020, you think this investment is terrible. So you have to really just know your stuff. Just do your studying. So now we're gonna go into real estate, my favorite topic, and I'm gonna try to keep this short and sweet. I think we're actually making pretty good time right now, Nico. But this is my baby right here. So real estate. Just some basic terms. I mean, I don't know actually how much you guys know, but mortgage is the debt used to pay for real estate. Equity is the difference between value. So here's the mortgage. Equity is the difference between value and the mortgage. FHA is important. If you don't know about FHA, you should know about it. It's a mortgage. It's actually the mortgage I used to buy my first house in 2015, 3.5% down. It's a game changer, right? Much different than 20% down. 20% down, most people cannot. 3.5% down, people can. So just to be aware of that if you're interested in buying a house. Also, you can do conventional mortgages for 3% down, but your credit score needs to be a certain rate or whatever. But just be aware of that. Interest is cost of money. That's literally what it is. So when you use a credit card, you pay interest. That's because you borrowed money. Same thing with a mortgage. When you save money with the bank, now in the past 10 years, maybe 12 years, savings rates have been terrible. But the idea is you're letting the bank borrow your money, and that's why you would get interest income. And then the big thing I'll actually want to touch on is what an asset is. Most people think an asset is the American dream home, which is not. This book is a game changer. Highly recommend reading it, listening to it. However, the best way to consume this information. Rich Dad Poor Dad just changed my way of thinking. I graduated from Fordham with an accounting degree. And this book is telling me that a house isn't an asset. I'm like, I just spent 4 years getting an accounting degree to tell me a house is an asset. What do you mean a house is not an asset? And this is the typical, white picket fence, 2.5 kids, dog, American dream house that I grew up in. I grew up in an American dream house. I grew up thinking that that's something I should be trying to attain. But after reading that book, literally that book, I got a good degree. I'm like well educated according to society, right? But that book changed how I thought about what a house is. And an asset is simply something that generates income. An American dream home does not generate income. You pay for your American dream home. And there's nothing wrong with that, but just know that's what it is. A house is an asset if it generates income, right? So that's literally the difference. When you look at real estate that you pay for is more of it's more of a liability. According to accountants like Nico and I, there's technically an asset portion, but in order from an investment perspective, a house is a liability. But if it generates income because you rent it out, now it's an asset. Now that's something we're looking for. And just to compare it to stocks, generally stocks, I don't even know if stocks, what percentage of stocks have a dividend, but a dividend is a quarterly cash payment. So if a stock has that, that's great. And if a stock doesn't have a dividend, then essentially you're waiting for it to appreciate. You're speculating, using Nico's word, you're speculating that it's going to increase in value. And there's nothing wrong with that. But my problem with that is the only way I can benefit financially from a stock is if I sell it. I have to sell the asset to get the money. Whereas if I own a house that generates income, I can own the asset and get cash flow from it. So that's why, that's one big reason. I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but that's one reason why I love real estate. Also major tax advantages, but we'll leave that nerdiness for another time. Something else I wanted to mention is Cardone Capital. This is the guy who runs his name's Grant Cardone. I'm a huge Grant Cardone fan. I love his message and what he does. I just wanted to share this information with you. Again, this is just supposed to be a brief overview. I highly recommend you just looking at the website just to check it out. Essentially, Cardone Capital, he goes out and buys a big apartment building, like 300 unit apartment building. He buys it himself. So the deal's bought. He already bet on it. And then what he does is he then sells pieces of that deal so that you can invest in it. You can basically buy a piece of that deal and get the return. But the big difference with Cardone Capital versus traditional crowdfunding is that you are a partner in the investment. You get a K1. You literally own a piece of the investment. You don't, compared to a REIT, a real estate investment trust, a REIT is something you own a piece of paper, and that paper then owns the real estate. So it's similar to owning a stock. Whereas with Cardone Capital, you're literally a partner in the company that owns the real estate. So this tax benefits piece, you get that. You get the tax benefits just as much as he would if he owned it on his own. So I think even if, you know, and the other thing with Cardone Capital is that it allows non-accredited investors, which is very important. There's a whole nother world that I learned at Ernst & Young about where rich people put their money. Hedge funds, private equity funds, accredited investors only. There's this whole world that Joe Schmoes like you and I don't know about because we didn't grow up with it. Teachers don't know about it. Why would they know about accredited funds and accredited investments, what all that is? None of them are. So there's a whole other world where people have access to it because they have a net worth of $1 million that does not include their primary home. Or they make 200 grand a year. Those, if you hit one of those, you're an accredited investor, you have access to all these different things. So Joe Schmoes like us don't have access to it. The reason why is they're trying to protect Joe Schmoes and don't want to get him swindled. I get that. But if you have somewhat of intelligence, you've done your homework, why not? Why can't you have the ability to invest in some things like this? Cardone Capital allows non-accredited investors. That's another reason why it's so special. Joe Schmoes like you and I can invest a minimum investment of $5,000. And I think that's a great opportunity to get exposure to big apartment building real estate. So that's another reason why I love Cardone Capital. Flynn asks, what are some good questions to ask yourself or a real estate agent when you're looking for a home? That's a great question. And I think the answer to that depends on what you're looking for your home for. The American dream home, you know, it's more about feelings and emotion, right? But if you're looking for an investment, the biggest thing, if you're looking for a property to buy to rent out, the biggest thing you got to figure out is the income has to be greater than the expenses. So if I'm looking to buy an investment property in the Bronx, for example, I look at the values, I calculate what the mortgage would be. Let's say the mortgage is $3,000. I got to look at similar properties in that area that what they would rent out for. And if they rent out for $4,000, for example, that means I'm going to make $1,000 a month after I pay my mortgage. Now there's other expenses involved and, you know, I don't want to go into too much detail, but in New York City, if you can find a place that can just pay for the mortgage, you're golden. In other places, you can afford to pay for other things like normal wear and tear and stuff like that. But yeah, when you're looking for an investment property, you want the income to be greater than expenses. And the real estate agent should be able to answer those questions, you know, and you can obviously check them with like Trulia and different other websites as well. So that's for an investment property. Those are definitely questions I'm asking. Okay, so I'm gonna zoom through my story real quick. My story of how I bought my home 5 years ago. It started in Bridgeport, Connecticut, actually. Bridgeport, Connecticut, because I assumed I couldn't afford New York City. Bad assumption. I didn't even look. Don't assume anything. You know, at least take a look before you make that decision. But I assumed I couldn't afford New York City, and I went straight to Bridgeport, Connecticut. The reason why Bridgeport is because it has this nice Metro North line that could take me right to Ernst & Young, which was in Times Square. So I was so committed to my why. I was so committed to it that I was willing to commute for 3 hours for at least a year, 3 hours a day for at least a year to buy my house that I knew would benefit me financially in the future. Wasn't my ideal lifestyle for a year, but I was willing to do it because my why was so strong. Thankfully, the house I was actually going to buy didn't work out, and I recalibrated. And this picture is important because Gotham Properties was a real estate group I used to work with in Brooklyn. And the important thing about it is just a group of like-minded people. Because when I got down, I felt bad. You know, I was in contract to buy a house. It didn't work out. And now I'm back to square one. and I met with them, and I was just, spending time with them, and they got me back on my feet. They encouraged me to kind of get back in the game, and they encouraged me to look into New York City, which is exactly what I did. I started in Brooklyn and realized, okay, Brooklyn, I'm tapped out in, but I was like, why don't I go back to the Bronx? I went to Fordham. I know Fordham really well, and I can explore other parts of the Bronx too. And that's brought me to this house. So this house is in the Bronx where I bought. It's a 2-unit property, so it generates income. And now that it's 5 years later, I can confirm it has appreciated in value. Now, even if it didn't, it'd still be a good deal, right? Even if it didn't, because it produces cash flow, it pays for itself essentially. So now, because it pays for itself, I'm not bothered. I'm not forced to sell it at any point, right? Let's say I lost my job, but I had renters paying the mortgage. I could, because usually when people lose their job, they lose their house because they can't afford the mortgage anymore. But because my house generated income, it can sustain itself. So that's the beautiful thing about that. And then the way I bought the house was I essentially did all my research in Bridgeport, Connecticut, right? So it wasn't a waste that I spent probably every weekend for 4 months. I was out there looking at property. It wasn't a waste, even though I felt bad about it, because the moment I saw my house, I knew it was a good deal because I had that research. I spent the time looking at houses in Bridgeport, Connecticut. So nothing goes to waste, right? You might try something and it might not work out, but the information you collect doesn't go away. You take notes, like you recognize what's happening. So that's my story. And this is the transition into Nico's story because he did something very similar.
Right. So I did something very similar, but I guess this picture signifies where I actually come from a little bit. I'm not the guy on the fire hydrant right there. I think this picture is pretty cool. But I come from a place where, it was nothing but buildings all around me, right? And so I didn't grow up in a house. I had family members who had homes, but I didn't necessarily understand the financial ramifications of not having a home, or the benefits to having a home, or anything of that nature. But I always knew that I wanted to shift, right? I wanted to change from coming from this impoverished mindset and coming from lack and moving toward actually having something and owning something, right? And so there are many ways that you can do it, and one way that I saw it fit to do it was go into real estate. And so I purchased my home. I don't have a picture of it up here, but I purchased my home 2 years ago in the Bronx. Well, actually now 2.5 years ago in the Bronx through FHA, as Becky mentioned, which was great. And one thing that we have to understand just about banks and finance in general, we have to really think about what that institution is in business for, right? Banks are in the business of lending money. And so there are certain ways in which they're incentivized for doing those things, and certain programs that you might be able to find to kind of squeeze in. And so where I came from, this impoverished mindset where I was just like, well, maybe I'll never own a home. I'll never live in a home because I'm just used to living in buildings. That's just all I see around me. With the knowledge of where I might fit in, it changed everything, right? And so FHA afforded me the opportunity to, not have to come up with 20%, but come up with 3.5% and purchase my home. And that's exactly what I did. And so now we can get into a little something of what I've grown an infatuation for as I'm, just growing in knowledge as much as I possibly can on a day-by-day basis. As Becky mentioned, you go to school and then you think that that's it, right? But there's so much to the game that you might not know about, and you have to be self-taught. You have to, seek knowledge yourself, right? No one's responsible for teaching you anything. You have to really go out and seek that knowledge. And so I grew an infatuation of group economics. I ran across this professor, Dr. Claude Anderson, years ago, and he was the first one to kind of bring to the forefront of my mind what group economics was, right? And I didn't understand it at first, but the more and more I kind of listened to what he had to say and then applied certain things to my personal life, I understood that I've kind of been doing it all along, and I'm kind of in that system already. And so I'll get into that also. Becky, if we could go to the next slide, just about what economics is, right? And so everyone has many different definitions. I actually kind of took bits and pieces of things that I agree with and kind of put it into one. So economic studies the decisions of allocating scarce resources and analyzing the immediate and long-term consequences and repercussions of those decisions, right? And one of the fundamental concerns of economics is a standard of living, which is very important, right? So standard of living affected by decision making. So make sure we have those coupled, right? Standard of living, decision making. In economic studies, the consequences of decision making, decisions made about scarce resources that have alternative uses. So when you just take those foundational concepts of what economics is, and you try to apply it to, what group economics is, everything that economics is, by itself is the same as group economics. You just insert your group here, right? And so economics studies the decisions that a family makes on allocating scarce resources and analyzing the immediate and long-term such and such. Economics studies the consequences of decisions made by business partners, whatever your group is, right? You can apply these concepts to. And in my opinion, as you look at this photo, right, you see Legos, right? Legos are there to, build many different things, whatever that you want to make, right? But it starts with a foundation. And the foundation is just an understanding of, what it's going to take to build on top of it, right? And so you have to build things on a solid foundation. And in my opinion, economics is a solid foundation that is used for wealth building. It's not necessarily telling you how to make money, but it is intent on you understanding how your decisions that you make can affect your longevity from a financial perspective. And so it's also important to think about economics literally as the study of your decision making, right? And so Becky knows I'm very big on budgeting and things of that sort, and it all has to do with the decisions that you make. And so let's just say, you wanted to take $1 and go to the store and buy an icicle. You can do that. Or you might be able to, go to a supermarket and get 5 icicles for $1 and maybe sell 4 and, keep 1 for yourself. But so it's really just about the decisions that you make with your scarce resources. I think we can go to the next slide also. So you already know what group economics is all about. You've been a part of it. You just haven't looked at it from this lens before, if you haven't heard about group economics, right? So if you haven't heard about group economics, you might not have even been aware that you've been a part of it this whole time. You see Uncle Sam, right? And you see how taxes were started, right? There was a war going on. We needed to pool resources so that, we could come out on top, and that's exactly what we did. You were a part of a team at work, and you had to pool your resources, whether they be intellectual or, physical labor, whatever the case may be. You had to pool those resources in order for you to come out on top. Like, we've been doing it all along, but we kind of haven't understood the structure thereof, right? And setting up that structure for ourselves, because we can very much do that. And so when you think about, the government of the United States, who's the government in your household? Like, who's the government in your, with your business partners, with your friends? Like, and how are you guys constructing decisions around the scarce resources that you guys have in order to benefit all of you, right? And so one of the main scarce resources that we have are time and our dollar, right? And so how are we pooling our dollars together? How are we pooling our intellectual capital together to further a collective gain? And this is basically what group economics is all about. I'm not necessarily going to get into, too much of the how, but overall, having an understanding that you can have more leverage together than apart makes the whole of the difference. We can go to the next slide. All right, and so systems thinking, as I mentioned before, we've all been a part of different systems, whether you work at a job and you have coworkers, or you're self-employed and you have employees, or you've been a part of a basketball team or baseball team, whatever the case may be. It's really just understanding, the systems and how to set up a framework for yourself. So I'll use an example, right? Let's say that there's a particular goal of a group of people. Let's call them family members, right? mom, a dad, and 3 kids, right? But these kids are all of working age, and they just so happen to live in an apartment, but they have a goal to buy a house. A system that they can set in place to buy a house is that everyone who works contributes to a down payment. And so where it would take maybe the father or the mother by themselves, or even one of the children by themselves, trying to cultivate this capital to purchase a home, it might take them 5 years, where collectively it takes them 1. And so the system that is in place is basically determined by those who are involved in the system, right? Maybe everyone says, hey, you know what, we're gonna brown bag it when we go to work. We're not gonna eat out. We're gonna save those funds, and we're gonna pool those funds together so that we can all, build that solid foundation for ourselves. The system that you can set in place is a directive of you and your constituents, but the whole premise is based around doing it collectively instead of individually. I think we a lot of times we get caught in the rat race, and you have to do for self, and you have to get for self. But overall, it's like, I mean, it's very futile. You can look at society and how certain societies have benefited from a collective systems mindset versus others who haven't. And it's just something that I totally believe can be the foundation for wealth building. And anybody who has any questions about it, absolutely throw them out. But yeah, personally, I have started a fund before where I have business partners, and I have people who were interested in a collective goal, and we pulled some funds together. I'm actually in the infancy stages of doing it again with regard to real estate development. And so me doing that on my own, it might take me, years and years. Not saying it can't be done, but me pooling my resources, both intellectually and, financially, with others who have the same goal in mind. We're looking to buy property this year alone. Like, as soon as, we get everything established, we're just hitting the ground running. And so that's some of the benefits that a group mindset, systems thinking, group economics can afford you.
Yeah, I think that's great. And this is actually one of my favorite topics. I mean, obviously real estate is probably my favorite, but this idea of taking ownership over your own life essentially is what I think is so important, because I was taught to go to work, get a job, get a retirement account, have somebody else handle my future essentially, and then retire and then start traveling and living life. And that thankfully I learned very on that was all backwards to me. But this group economics point is so important, because basically you're the government of your own household, and people don't think about it like that. People just let just let somebody else take care of like my future. And I think it's important. That's why I think financial education is important. I think all the stuff's important. So you can have the tools. Now you can decide to let somebody else do your 401k, but you're aware, you're making that decision. It's not just happening to you. So I think that stuff's really, I think group economics, and like Nico said, it could be something big. Ernst & Young's a huge company. The whole 25 floors they had was full of group economics, from a company-wide to, team-wide to, people sitting next to one another. It's all group economics. So, yeah, I think that's a great point. Great point. So this is the last topic we're hitting on, and this will be pretty quick. So I just wanted to, again, thank everyone for joining in. We can hang out a little bit. I think there's a way I can unmute everyone so we can chat more. If you guys want to do that, I'll figure that out once we go after this slide. But yeah, I mean, any questions? Well, we're going to give you our contact information if you guys have any questions too. But the last slide is, I think, very prevalent to 2020. I think more people over time, especially younger people, like millennials, were, very aware of like what's happening. I think more and more people are just being aware of what's happening. And so neighborhood and local investing, I think, is an important topic to touch on, because voting with your dollars, I think, is an important concept, right? What can you do to help support neighborhoods you care about? It's not, again, it's being the government of your own neighborhood. Obviously there is official government, but if you have all your birthday parties, or all your friends have birthday parties at this one restaurant that you love, it's going to help that restaurant, right? So you can make decisions like that if you want to, right? I think COVID, obviously, disturbed the world in so many cases. But obviously the restaurant industry got hit hard. And one way people could support these businesses that they love is to buy gift cards for the future. I mean, that was one of the first things I thought of. No, we can't go right now, but I'm betting that in the future, this place is still going to be around. So I'm going to buy a gift card now so they can have the cash flow now, and then I can get that gift card later. Even just sharing social media, you know, or just word of mouth. I mean, word of mouth is one of the best forms of advertising. So just talking about company or businesses or even just people you appreciate. Paying full price. I mean, you know, as silly as that sounds, if one of your friends is starting something new and, you know, they have something to sell, yeah, you could get the family friend discount but paying full price is a great way to show support for people. So that's another thing. Again, vote with your dollars or your resources. There's a great company I know that accountants at Fordham volunteered for, where you could basically do tax returns for free. It's not donating money, but you're using your skill to help someone, you know, get their taxes done. So it's vote with your dollars and vote with your resources, whatever you have. What else we have? Okay, that's duplicate. Another cool thing that I found out recently is this company called Mainvest. This website basically allows, again, Joe Schmo, so this is for non-accredited investors, which is great. It's invest in Main Street, not Wall Street. And that's their tagline. I think it's a great, I mean, not that you don't invest in Wall Street, again, just knowing your market, but you can invest in Main Street, a great opportunity for the companies, the small businesses to get funding. Because it's hard for some business to get funding. If you're starting something new, you go to Chase Bank and they want to look at 2 years financials. You don't have it because you just started, you know? And for a lot of people that's hard. So for local people who believe in whoever is, you know, the amazing chef that wants to start a restaurant or whatever the case may be, this website is actually a great platform for that. Another way is to just get to know your local businesses. Like there's nothing stopping you from loaning a small business money. I mean, if that's what you want to do, you know, there's different. And that's why I love group economics. You just take more control over what's happening, you know, and obviously you have to do your research. I'm not just saying just give money to whoever comes your way, or even if you're a lawyer, just reviewing contracts, you know, or I'm a bookkeeper, so I can just review your books and see how your books are at. So there's various different ways to help. And I think an exchange is good. Yes, you can donate money. Yes, there's nonprofits, and that's all good. I'm all for that stuff. But I think an exchange is a very beneficial thing. So because it helps the continuity. It continues if there's an exchange rather than just like a one-time donation or something. So one Mainvest company I want to talk about is Boogie Down Grind. Now, full disclosure, Boogie Down Grind, they're an amazing coffee shop in the Bronx. They're one of my bookkeeping clients, so I know their numbers very well. I know the owner of the cafe, and actually one of the investors, the original OG investors, is on this call right now, Sulma. And they are a company on Mainvest. So this is an opportunity. Let's say you love the Bronx and you love espresso-based coffee in the Bronx. This is a great platform for you to vote with your dollars and put money, not just give them money, but you're investing money. So here's a quick example. If you invest $1,000 today with the Boogie Down Grind, this is how they have it set up. In the next 7 years, you're going to get the original principal back of $1,000 plus $500 interest. And the way it is that they have, on January 1st, 2027, they have to give this money back. So they can do it earlier, but worst case scenario, just to run the numbers, is $500 over 7 years time, right? I'm talking out so you guys can do this own calculations when you're looking at your own investments to try to identify what's a good deal. $500 divided by 7 years, right? That's the amount of interest I'd be getting back. That's $71 a year, right? And $71 a year over my original investment of $1,000, that's 7% a year. That's pretty good because, I mean, you may actually, you know, so for people who don't look at numbers, they may think $71 a year, like, why would I do that? And it's like, well, what are your other options? You can go to a savings account and get 0.1%, which is 1/10 of 1%, which is much less than $71 a year. You could do that. That is totally an option. You could put your money in the stock market where if there's a quarterly dividend, that's good cash flow. But if you're waiting for the stock to appreciate, you have to sell in order to get the stock. So so basically I like this idea because it's a good return. You're putting your money where your mouth is. I mean, the Boogie Down Grinds, and I've invested in the Boogie Down Grind just to be clear, but if you are interested in investing, actually, they're only doing it for 10 more days. So if you go to Mainvest, I don't know, Nico, if you could look up the website real quick, mainvest.com, and just share the link, just in case anybody is interested in doing that. And there's other really cool, a lot of New York City businesses as well. So you might find one that you already know. Because I think there's a lot of New Yorkers on here. But yeah, it's just a great way to invest locally and actually get a decent return on your money. So so that's it for local investing. I mean, I think this is I think Mainvest is I don't know too much about Mainvest, but I invested with them through the platform with Boogie Down Grind. So it's a great opportunity to invest in local businesses. But that's basically all we have here. So again, my email's up there, Nico's email's up there. Feel free to reach out to us. We love talking about this stuff. Whenever you guys leave, you guys are going to get literally a 2-question survey. I hate the word survey. Did I say the word survey? Dang. Hate the word survey. But basically, what Nico and I are thinking about doing is, if we want to go deeper into one of these topics, let us know. The survey is literally, what did you learn and what topic would you want to go deeper in? Or maybe it's a different topic. So the survey just gives us feedback in terms of what we'd want to talk about next. So there's that. If you have any questions, again, we can hang out for a little bit. I don't know if there's been any questions. Not officially. I think I'm going to turn you all on. Can that work? I'm unmuting you guys. Just in case you guys rather talk. You all are unmuted, I think. Or now you can unmute yourselves. I allowed you to speak, so if you want to speak, you can unmute yourself. But this is basically it. You can follow me on Instagram, the link in my bio. The link in my bio gives you, you can sign up for just keeping up to date about what we're doing here. But that's about it. So if you guys wanted to unmute yourselves and chat, and if you have any questions or just talk more about a topic we went into, I'll shut up so you guys can do that. I don't know if Nico, you had any final words if you wanted to share.
Yeah, I just think that, I mean, overall, I just love to kind of be forward thinking. Like, even if you don't have anything like, to add.
What'd you say, Sulma?
I have a question.
Yeah. Maybe her daughter was trying to ask a question.
No.
Sulma, I can't hear you. I just heard you giggle though.
Maybe it froze.
No, big brother, no, this is good stuff.
I like that. That was a great comment. Big brother knows this is good stuff.
That's right.
Right.
Sulma, were you trying to say something, or you just unmuted, ready to go?
It's just froze.
Oh, it's frozen. Okay, Nico, well, I'm gonna mute her for a second because I want you to finish your thought.
So I was just gonna say, the process of forward thinking, right? And so you might not necessarily know where to start, but that's like half the battle is already done. Because once you think about it, once you start to, once the seed is planted, just like an investment, right? Once the seed is planted, all you have to do is water it. All you have to do is continue to cultivate it. And so if you say, hey, I always wanted to buy a home, that's half the battle. Now, the rest of the battle is to say, right.
You literally just used my favorite analogy.
Yeah.
Planting a seed, man. That's literally what it is.
Right.
And yeah, the thought process of just the idea of thinking about it. Speaking of planting seeds, another good reason to follow me on Instagram is I'm growing vegetables.
Me too.
Are you really?
I am dead serious. I have lemon and habanero and apples. And apples, yes.
Lemon tree. Don't you need a lemon tree for lemons?
Well, I can show you. Hold on for a second. It's in its infancy stages. Hold on.
Oh my gosh. Lemon tree is growing in the Bronx.
So well, this is how I started it. See, it started. See?
Wow.
Well, I didn't know plants grew in the Bronx. I'm kidding, I'm from the Bronx.
So Becky, are you guys into companion gardening?
What's companion gardening?
So companion gardening means that there are certain things that protect other plants. That's how you go organic. So you use basil to plant with tomatoes. The basil protects the tomatoes from certain pests, and it also gives the basil extra flavor. You also want to always use like marigold because there's a thing called nematoids that destroy the roots. But if you Google companion gardening, I'm a big gardener in the Bronx. If you use companion gardening, it really tells you like what vegetables you plant with other vegetables. Like I love fresh mint. That is like the best. If you want the best drink in the summer, is you boil fresh mint, then let it cool, add your lemon, whatever sweetener you want. It's amazing, but mint is a weed. It will take over your whole yard in no time. So you always want to plant it in a container, then like, so there's like all different kind of things. Like where I live in the Bronx, I live on Barnes Avenue. I face east-west. We get blazing sun first thing in the morning because of east. So like knowing the direction of where your house faces in terms of direction of the sun will tell you like which works better, how often you have to water. Plants do not do well over 85 degrees. You have to really, really water them a lot because they tend to strain. So I also took a class at the Bronx Botanical Gardens. It's really interesting. They have classes on planting and they give you those kind of tips, especially on how to garden organically. And there are such things as organic herbicides and pesticides, so that if you don't want to use regular pesticides, etc., you can go that way. So, but companion garden is the first step to like growing your vegetables organically, because there's nothing better than sun-ripened tomatoes that you pick fresh off the front and sit and make in the morning. There's nothing better than, like, I never knew that green peppers didn't have a taste until I grew them myself.
I can't tell you how happy you just made me.
Mind blown.
I thank you. Thank you. I mean, I could talk about real estate all day, but gardening and like farming and like growing food and just knowing where your food comes from, I think that topic, I'm using real estate for passive income so that I can do more gardening. I think that's where I'm going. Yeah, I just started. So going back to starting, I learned a lot. I refer to myself as the YouTube farmer. I learned a lot on YouTube in terms of things like that. Companion gardening is definitely something I'm going to be looking, because I just started learning about how lavender gets like certain pests, like not pests, but like flies and bugs away. Like it's good to have, because I'm like, what do I need lavender for? So I actually didn't buy it, but then I realized I guess it's a companion plant that that you can use to keep away certain bugs. So I that idea, so companion gardening is something I gotta look into more. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's just like when I started, it's funny because I remember the first time someone talked to me about essential oils and I was like, what voodoo nonsense are you trying to tell me about? And then like, there it is, like 20 years later, and I'm so into essential oils and so into this. Like Epsom salts is an amazing way of preparing the soil for your garden. Like the stuff that your mama told you to go soak in, you can put that into your soil.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Epsom salt.
Wow.
Albany, how good is that stuff, man? You can grow a garden in the Bronx.
You can, and a lot of stuff you can do in containers simply because, and by the way, dandelion, the weed that we've tried to kill forever and ever. So you go into fancy restaurants and you get mixed greens. One of those greens is dandelion greens. Dandelion is so good for you. You can turn the root into wine. It's bitter. It literally cleans your blood. It's like, that's the bitter property of dandelion. That's why a lot of people go to kale. but dandelion is such a good thing. But so you want one of those things to fall into a nice pot and grow your dandelion in a pot, not the one that grows in the street, because
Right.
that's like gross.
Yeah.
But and you grow it, it really, or you can just go get dandelion seeds. You can make it into a tea. You can saute it like you would saute spinach. You know, if you're into greens, it is so easy to grow spinach, to grow kale. My sister actually got some seeds and we're about to go plant a whole bunch of kale.
Oh,
It is so easy. And this stuff, you know, anything like that, lettuce greens, I planted lettuce greens and I just cut off the tops and then kept watering it, and it literally regrew right through what I had shaved off. So I was eating that like all summer long. So if you can think of what it is that you eat, like I can say this, I had a really hard time growing beans, like sugar snap peas and beans. I just didn't do well with that. I gave up. But when tomatoes, peppers, if you know what you eat and you grow that, it's amazing. And also, you know, you save a lot of money because, you know, if you plant now, you won't get it until August.
right.
But if you start in March, I mean, you still get it by August. You'll start to get a harvest. But you know, if you plan ahead and you start seeding or whatever in March, you literally can have a bounty all summer long. And think about, you know, how much you spend on like tomatoes and peppers across the summer. Now all of a sudden you're growing that in your front yard, and and you take that extra money and you can do the jar thing. You shove that in a jar and then go and invest it.
Yeah,
You
no, totally. I mean, not, and Claudia, I think you have more experience eating fresh food from your garden, but it just tastes better. It's just, it's better
so much
for
better.
you.
Oh my gosh.
It tastes better. It's just a better experience.
Yeah.
And I've really been enjoying using my hands, and it's like almost like a meditation. It's like a Zen moment where I'm in the garden. I'm putting my fingers in the soil to see if it needs more water, you know, just really just getting in touch with nature, which is something my family never really did. I grew up with New Yorker parents that just did the city thing, supermarkets where we got our food, and you know, that was it. So I'm really enjoying this experience. Thank you so much for sharing.
No problem.
Yeah, and I'm glad to know the Bronx Botanical Gardens. I've been watching a lot of stuff on YouTube, but it'd be nice to physically go somewhere. I mean, when we can.
Yeah.
They have a whole thing, you know, and also just I love scent. So I got this new neighbor and we got into a battle, but I had honeysuckle growing along my fence and it looked like a bush. And you do not understand what it's like when the wind, like the early morning, the wind would just pass by the honeysuckle and that scent would just come floating in. That was just an amazing, or all of a sudden I come out and there'd be butterflies like in my front yard. You know, I'm a whole lot older than both of you, but I have lived in the Bronx, and I was born in Brooklyn, raised in the Bronx my entire life, and which is why I do stuff in the Bronx. And it's when I started a meetup group in the Bronx. I had options to go into other places, but I'm like, if you want to change the perception, like if you live in Manhattan, people like, oh, you have an office in Manhattan. Oh, you must be really good. If you have an office or a business in the Brooklyn, oh, you must be really successful. Even parts of Queens, but say the Bronx, it's like, oh, you're not doing very well. And that's just nonsense. So I recognize that if you want to change that perception, you got to change that perception, which means planting our flag in the Bronx, bringing those same services that I would automatically say, oh, go into Manhattan and do, Queens to do, etc. No, I'm doing that same thing right here. And why do I know it's good? Because I'm good. You know, I'm that same person that you would do business with in Manhattan, not knowing where I live. So why is it because now you know where I live, you don't think that I have value, but I do. And I bring that value to, you know, my customers, to my clients in the Bronx. And it's to really start that, to create that critical mass where the Bronx goes from being, oh, that place where, which is funny because of the history of the Bronx, we were the richest neighborhood in the 5 boroughs.
Really?
Yes, the Bronx was
Never knew that.
So there used to be, I can't remember the magazine anymore because it went out of business, but it did this whole thing about the Bronx. And the Bronx was the richest neighborhood in the 5 boroughs. What destroyed it was urban development, 2 highways and a subway line. And, and the Bronx was owned by one guy named Bronx.
Right.
Was named Bronx, and we were considered the suburbs, and this was the suburbs. This is why if you go through the South Bronx, you see these beautiful homes.
Right.
But then urban development destroyed it, and everybody started running out of it, etc. So now, if you go through the Bronx, look at what's happening. There's things happening in the Bronx. There's the buildings like where the warehouses are. And I have 5 minutes because I have to. My church service started like 10 minutes ago. As I gotta go. But if you go now where I forget the name of the building, but it's when you're coming down the Bruckner Expressway and you look over to the left. There's all those warehouses.
Yep.
Look at what's happening there. It's starting. So
Totally.
if you ride through the Bronx now, like, and I'm riding my bike, and I'm like, wait, when did all this happen? And it's because we ourselves aren't looking at our neighborhoods. And one day I was checking out, I was on Street Easy, and I was looking for, apartments for a friend of mine. And I was like, I'm like, wait a second, that's 138th Street and 3rd Avenue.
Yep.
I'm reading the ad. You want to read, have your morning Joe before, you go. And I'm like, go, what do they call it? North Manhattan. I said, that's not North Manhattan, that's the Bronx. What the hell are you doing? So they're trying to rename Hoe Avenue. They were advertising properties on, I said, Hoe Avenue? Hoe Avenue? You can't get more South Bronx than Hoe Avenue. Oh no, that's North Manhattan. I'm like, no, it's not. That is Hoe Avenue. That is the Bronx.
Claudia, thank you so much for coming, and I'm sorry you're late, but I'm glad you stayed on to give us awesome knowledge. I took down your email address, so I'm going to keep you updated on when we do these meetups again, because we'd love to talk more. But your sentiment about the Bronx, I mean, Nico and I, that's the reason why we host the meetup in the Bronx. I mean, that's where we live, so it was easy, but it was a conscious decision, because we knew this conversation was important, because this like you're saying, it always happens. You live in your life, then you look up, and all of a sudden there's waterfront property with studio apartments for $2,000, and you're like, what happened? And so it's just, this is this conversation that we're trying to have, just so people are aware of what's going on, and there's ways to benefit from it. And that's, that's actually one of the reasons why I have a bookkeeping company. That same idea, I wanted to help businesses in the Bronx that were already there stay there. How could I help? Let me do their books for them, and get their financials in order. So at least that part's handled, but they could focus on, the business more. But, the back end bookkeeping stuff was done. So we totally are, on that same page. I'm not from the Bronx. I'm from New Jersey, but I went to Fordham. So I'm an immigrant of the Bronx, and I love the Bronx. And I want that stereotype to change as well. And that's why I love doing work in the Bronx. Nico, you're from the Bronx, right?
Yeah. So I was born in Queens, and I was raised between Queens and the Bronx, but like every school that I went to, like elementary, middle school, all Queens, until I got to high school and I went to school in Manhattan, but I still live in the Bronx. I mean, sorry, the Bronx. I was saying Queens right now, but no, the Bronx. So the Bronx is what raised me. And so, I always used to hear bad things about, like, oh, you live in the Bronx? What's that mean? I'm like, what does that mean? Like, I didn't see a difference, and I still don't see a difference, and we're witnessing that there is no difference, right?
Yep.
So.
Yeah. Albany's from the Bronx too, for the record. Albany, I know you wanted to make
that known. Yeah, I'm from the Bronx, and I'm actually I'm in the process of building my nest egg to invest in the Bronx. So that's definitely down the line.
Albany and I work together. She's unfortunately leaving the school, but we would end up talking just like you and I would talk, Nico, just after work. It'd be like an hour sometimes, and we're like, what happened? But we would just talk about this thing, just this message, so it's good.
Yeah. Everybody,
actually like thinking.
What?
No.
Actually thinking about farming, and talking about farming and gardening and investing. I'm actually going to Puerto Rico with a friend, and it was actually his idea to look into investing in a coffee farm in Puerto Rico. And
Albany, you better keep me updated on that.
yeah, and they're expecting the first harvest in 2023. So we're gonna check it out to see how it's functioning, and I just wanted to know if you guys had any like tips, or I'm thinking about asking questions on how much is expected in revenue and all of that, and how much each tree yields, because like each investment is determined by like a tree yields a certain amount of harvest, and you're investing by the tree. So I'm looking at all these questions to ask for when we go, and I
Girl.
was wondering if you guys had any could poke any holes, or come up with any ideas that I
I mean,
didn't
get
have
the
to
numbers
ask.
for sure. They should have some sort of financial statements. That'll tell you a whole story. I would also be curious as who their customers were. But also,
Right.
Albany, we know a lot of coffee shops in the Bronx. I mean, I work with 2 coffee shops. I work with 3 coffee shops specifically. So, I mean, yeah, like the network is important. Who their customers are, some wholesale, retail. I think like coffee beans. I think everybody creating a brand is important. Do they have a brand, or do they just sell beans and nobody knows who they are? But yeah, the numbers are important. When it comes to like nature, that's a different level of risk, right? That a traditional
Right.
office job doesn't have to consider. So people can work from home during a health crisis, right? But
Right.
if there's a terrible storm and there's no coffee beans to sell, like what does that look like? There's probably insurance, I'm guessing, but I would definitely ask those questions.
Yeah,
I'm happy
that's
to
something
look
that
at.
I actually didn't think about, but
Yeah, I'm happy to look at the numbers with you too once you get them.
oh, sure.
Yeah, but I
I
think
mean, I
that
have the website already, but of course it's gonna look different when I ask questions, and
yeah,
there's like the numbers.
yeah, definitely. No, I think that's wonderful, and I love Puerto Rico too. They're like it's like America, I think it's a wonderful place, and especially last 5 or 6 years, they've been hit hard just with Mother Nature. So I love. I actually celebrated my birthday. I don't know if I told you about that. I celebrated my birthday in Puerto Rico the year after Maria, because I'm like,
no invite.
yeah. My bad.
I don't even think we knew each other back then, but
I know. I was a little more low key, but yeah, I was trying to vote my dollars. I'm like, all right, my $100 in Manhattan is whatever, and it might be whatever to Puerto Rico, but I'm gonna rent a place. I'm gonna, spend money there. I'm gonna eat lunch there. So yeah, I love Puerto Rico. Old San Juan, beautiful little city. Did you know that Puerto Rico and San Juan, their names got mixed up? Puerto Rico
really
means rich port, which is
Mm-hmm.
which is where San Juan is, and
Yeah.
because it was a rich port, that was the port where people were coming in and out of. But somehow the names got mixed up, and the country was named Puerto Rico, rich port, right? I hope I'm not spitting garbage. Let me look this up.
We're gonna fact check you.
I'm fact checking myself. It means rich port. Okay, Puerto Rico means rich port in Spanish. So the story now makes sense. Or for sure makes sense. So yeah, that was a fun fact. And San Juan should have been the name of the country, but instead it's just the city. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Puerto Rico. So yeah, I would love to hear more about that. And then again, I mean, with Food Economics Network, we can figure out how to make sure, why sell what's it called? I don't know, any random bean company when we can sell a bean company that we're more interested in, right? That's what everybody does. They invest in things, they work with the people they like to work with and who they want to support. So I love it.
Right.
I'm totally with it.
Yeah, and I'm interested in learning more about that main vest.
Yeah, look into it. I think we sent the link on the chat.
Yeah, I put the link in the chat somewhere.
Yeah, but I'm gonna do a follow-up email as well. But yeah, I would look into it, especially if, I mean, you can invest as little as $100 with Mainvest. So with the Boogie Down Grind, their thing is done in 10 days. So if you're interested in that, I would look into that sooner rather than later. But
Right.
Yeah, I'll look into that.
But yeah, they got other cool businesses in there too. I don't know any of them. The only one I know is the Boogie Down Grind. But yeah, it's just a cool platform. Really, really cool platform.
Thank you guys for this wealth of knowledge. I'm
Yeah.
really looking forward to like, maybe like some sort of group that is formed like on social media. Like maybe I really like Facebook groups like to learn information from other investors, and I wonder what that would look like for
Yeah.
for this too.
You know, Albany, you're 100% right. But I mean, we definitely have to figure out something, because Nico and we've been committed to doing once a month, and I think that's been great. But I think, you know, like you're saying, this conversation is super important. So how can we do more of this stuff?
Right.
We need to figure out a way. But, you know, this is a little side hustle we have. We have full-time jobs.
Right.
We have our own
But we were
side
talking
hustle.
about that.
Yeah.
We were talking about expanding the reach.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, the thing with Facebook groups is like it's almost no involvement, like minimal
You
involvement.
just got to set it up.
It's just about creating the space,
Okay.
like, and then people essentially just help each other and support each other. That's what I've
Okay.
seen in my
All right.
experience with like Facebook groups.
All right,
Yeah,
cool. So we'll have to look at-
it's really the occasion where like people ask for the admin and stuff like that. Just learning
Okay.
from each other.
That's good to know. I haven't been on Facebook in years, because when I go on Facebook, I come out and it's like the next day. Like I just go so into a hole. I have to completely remove myself from the platform. So I don't use it personally, but yeah, maybe this could be a good place to have some more conversations.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this was great.
Absolutely.
Barry and Flynn, are you still there? Maybe not. All right. Well, this was good. Hour 20 minutes.
Thank you guys. So
Yeah, Albany, thanks for coming. I appreciate you. I'm gonna miss you, dog.
I'm not going anywhere.
All right. All right. Well, this is it. Thanks everyone for joining in, and we'll be in touch. Nico, thank you, brother.
Of course.
Enjoy the rest of your
Yes, ma'am.
Sunday, man. I'll
Yes,
catch
you
up with
too.
you later.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
All right, bye.
Bye.